So are Silicon Valley's billionaires overreaching in their quest to own the future? Is it coming at the expense of shareholders? Corey Johnson, Bloomberg West editor-at-large, joining me right now. Charlie Warzel, BuzzFeed tech analyst and editor, and Max Wolf, Citizen VC chief economist. Corey, I'm going to start with you. I mean, there's some interesting plays here. A lot of money at stake for $2 billion, specifically for Oculus. What is Mark trying to do that could potentially be similar to what Google's trying to do?
Well, I do think Google Glass tells us a lot about possibly what Mark Zuckerberg's looking at in terms of Oculus, and imagining, looking at all the work that they're doing to develop the next sort of platform for computing, and thinking that Oculus might indeed be it, and using a lot of shares as well as cash to pay for it. But, you know, for all of the criticism that this far-out spending might engender, I think it's worth noting that the company's really crushing it on just about every metric, and everything seems to be accelerating for them, whether it's faster user growth last quarter, skyrocketing revenue per user, skyrocketing advertising per user. They've taken the mobile business from 0 2 years ago to over $1.2 billion in the last quarter alone. So criticize as we might, and as I surely will, I think it's also worth noting that these guys are really killing it.
Yeah, and you know what, that at the end of the day, that's what shareholders really do care about. Right. As long as they see that there's profitability there, as long as the business is growing, you know, you can get away with a whole lot more than you could if the business wasn't doing so well. Charlie, let me go over to you. What could these drones actually do? We're talking about providing Wi-Fi access to people.
Well, I mean, they're going to hover a little bit above where a normal plane would go, and ideally they're going to be part of internet.org, and this idea that you know, Facebook and some other big tech companies are going to provide internet and connectivity in, you know, regions of the world that don't have it, and bring the next, you know, couple billion people online.
Does that threaten the broadband industry?
I don't know necessarily. I mean, right now this is sort of like, this feels very much like a marketing kind of technique. You know, every time drones are involved right now for a tech company, it kind of feels like it's, you know, one of those things where they're trying to, you know, make news and create headlines, get us to talk about it.
Like, you're just not cool unless you have, you know, some drones in your arsenal, right? Max, yeah, we've seen this with Jeff Bezos, obviously, too. What is it that Facebook needs to do, though, to stay competitive? Because that's one of the big concerns here, that it could run the risk of turning into a BlackBerry down the road if it doesn't really stay on top of things. I mean, this is a company that's willing to spend $19 billion to get a messaging app just in an effort to stay on top.
Sure. I mean, I think part of the story here is that Facebook is trying to use its money, its value on the share markets right now to build a future. I think that part of what is a little bit frightening is they're not so sure the future is Facebook and it's social. It might be drones. It might be private messaging. That's a little bit frightening. It's a little eyes off the prize, even though they are doing quite well. On the other hand, there's a long history of making wild acquisitions and then working really hard to try to show the big boys that you can actually make money off of them. And I think Facebook might have done a little too well with Instagram, so they're getting awfully aggressive. On the other hand, as long as other folks in your space are doing similar things, you can hide behind them and be creative and crazy in exactly the way that Silicon Valley and Wall Street have decided it's okay to be crazy.
Creative and crazy, and that kind of works in a way. Hey, you know, Corey, you know, we talk a lot about Microsoft, and one of the concerns there is that they just weren't creative and crazy enough. I mean, should investors be applauding this kind of action from a Mark Zuckerberg?
Well, I mean, I think you need to. You can look at each one of these and see evil genius. I don't know. You can see a plan. I mean, if you look at Oculus, you can see a plan where they imagine, look, we want to know the ways that people will compute in the future. And while this may or may not be the platform, this is going to be the next platform for a little while. We're going to learn a lot in the process, and we didn't have to go through all the rigmarole that Google's going through with Glass. Maybe that's what they're thinking. As far as the drone thing goes, you know, it's happening at the same time. We can talk about that and why it's happening now separately. But the drone notion is a belief in market share, and a belief that if they can make the market bigger, they will own that market share. But the crucial gating factor for Facebook in the future isn't going to be market share and ramping up revenue per user. It's the number of people on the internet flat out, and that they need to alter that future with these drones. But why is it all happening at once?
Why is it all happening at once? I think that's a great question. I think it's a fantastic question, and I do wonder, Corey, and I'll get your reaction first, and then we'll go to Charlie and Max. But you know, how much is just the idea of easy money contributing to this, and the idea that this company needs to do something?
Bingo.
They're feeling pressure, right? They don't want to turn into a state company.
Well, I like it when you say my questions are great questions. But besides that, I think that what's going on here is they recognize at Facebook that their stock price is quite high right now. They recognize at this time of, I would imagine, at this time of easy Fed policy. Let us not forget the chief operating officer once worked in the Treasury Department for Larry Summers, right? Sheryl Sandberg knows quite a bit about monetary policy and what the government can do to change that, the access to easy capital. And what happens, and so that maybe this is a time to spend that stock. When you look at them doing it over and over and over again in a week or 2 weeks' time, using a lot of stock to take a different future, I think that they recognize that stock is better spent than their cash right now. Yeah, and we're also in a situation where we learn that Google, of course, is issuing Class C shares in order to also make additional acquisitions and retain ownership. So that suggests that we might see more acquisitions in the tech space. I don't know, Charlie, does it feel like 1999 all over again in a way?
You know, I feel like we have to sort of look at Mark Zuckerberg and in comparison to a lot of these other people. And he's sort of proven in the past year or so that, you know, he is a tech mogul. But, you know, it's not good enough almost in Silicon Valley just to be a mogul now. Now you have to be a visionary. Now you need a Hyperloop. Now you need a contact lens that, you know, helps track diabetes. You need to give internet to the next, you know, 4 billion people.
In other words, Jeff Bezos has helped set a whole new standard.
Yeah, I mean, there's sort of an idea now that, you know, you have to be more than just a deal maker. You have to be someone who's going to try to alter the course of human history. Yeah, but we're also talking about using shareholder money to do all this. And so, you know, Max, I'll go over to you. I mean, what's ultimately at stake here? I mean, is this something that investors should be pleased with?
Well, I think great ideas are a lot more important than great big egos, and when that gets forgotten, you have great big trouble. That being said, if you try to make a sort of systematic approach of what Facebook's done lately, and you do run the risk of imposing a pattern where there wasn't one, it looks like they're going to grow if the internet grows, hence the idea of putting more people online, whether that's WhatsApp or the drones, or they're going to grow if they get into a different business. So one way to think about it is they have a future continuing to very successfully monetize what they did in the past, but to grow beyond that, to be one of the big boys of tech, like an Apple, like a Google, like an Amazon, they're going to need to go outside their comfort zone and figure out 3 things: how to not overpay, how to get into the right business, and how to stick it out and make money there. And we're 0 for 3 to see how they get there. I think they can, and they're doing great right now, but that's a very wide open question, and it raises the risk profile on this as an investor.
Yeah, most definitely, especially when you're talking about valuations like $9. Thank you so much, Corey. Always a pleasure. Charlie and Max. Coming up, everyone.